and moved to the new Parkside, just community park, without mentioning a skate park and basketball court. Those are public facilities in the Parkside plan. They're excluded, omitted, maybe by some sort of little staff mistake, right? Shouldn't they be there?
It should be there.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and they are on a map. I mean, you have a Parkside map, and of course, the skate park is there, basketball court is there. So the map is more true than the text.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to the general plan in general, and the Baylands map, there is, the text is correct, but the map is still the old 91 map.
91 map, yeah.
And just so confusing. Why you cannot have an accurate map that says the Baylands is planned development, trade, commercial, instead of mixed use like it's now again stayed there. Why can't you change that to be true as you're changing the general plan? You might as well make it correct. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Miller? Anybody wants to comment on what Mr. Ray Miller brought it for us?
Actually, I was going to take this item off of the consent calendar as well, because I had a couple of items that I wanted to discuss first.
Okay.
First of all, I do remember in our discussion last time that we talked about potentially recommending some sort of soil or hazard study, but unfortunately I can't decipher my own notes. It says something about a negative declaration, and I was wondering what we actually decided last meeting, because I don't see anything in the notes this time about doing anything like that. Did we decide it's not necessary?
We added page D18, section 412, comment 50. Ensure site design complies with California Building Code, Brisbane Municipal Code requirements for floodplain development, other safety-related design criteria pertaining to soil stability, liquefaction, other geologic hazards.
Okay. Can you give me a moment to look at that? You said D18?
D18.
And the agenda report did address that in the last bullet point on page 2. It was included in the summary of your comments.
Sorry, which item on D18?
So it's about in the middle of that table. It's page number is 50. The section is 4.1.2. It's new standard J in purple underlined text.
I don't know if that's quite sufficient for what we were talking about, because we were talking about under sea level rise, the fact that if the ground has to be raised a foot or 5 feet or 10 feet, that could have significant impacts on the character of the design, and also whether if the buildings aren't being built at the same time, what would the impacts of having to do fill in different orders, and I think it was more the intention, maybe I'm wrong about this, but it was my impression that it was more of our intention to ask for an elevation study related to sea level rise and liquefaction, and not merely have one sentence about.
That wasn't, I mean, if that's your.
Okay, maybe I was
an
recall,
action.
I was probably the only one who had that.
Well, I just don't recall you even saying it. But
we were definitely talking about the road height differences, and
I think
perhaps it was more me imagining than saying.
No, I think the comment was made that we're going to raise it up, and at the bottom you can have the fill, and because I remember we raised that point, what will be at the bottom of the building. It's 5 feet higher now, and and away from, and the
Yeah.
road will be at the bottom. So idea was that in that particular area, if the project is starting brand new, that the roads will be at the same level, but if it's not, then there will be a difference of the elevation. And at bottom of the, whatever the difference is, whether it's 5 feet or 3 feet or 4 feet based on the sea level rise, I think the staff made the comment that we can have some kind of a screening there and have these stairs to go up to the level. So that's why we said that the measurement of the height should be from the, I can read that. Reference grade for measuring building height should be defined for the park site plan area as being from the finished grade, not existing grade, and to account for raised ground level that may be needed due to the floodplain levels at the time of construction.
I do remember
So
that comment.
that was the language, and I think it really takes, I mean, you cover whatever my concerns were in that particular part.
Yeah, I guess my comment, this whole issue of, you know, there's two things. One is sort of the finish grades, and that's very clear. I understand the concern about sea level rise, but again, I don't know that through this parkside plan is the tool to address the city of Brisbane issues with prospective future sea level rise or adaptation strategy. Because again, the idea that somehow you can build a building that's served by a road that's 12 feet above the road, that the road's not inundated and the utilities aren't. I'm not even seeing how these kind of sites develop if sea level rise inundation is that severe.
Mm-hmm.
These individual sites are not going to be developed. So the idea of planning for that is a little hard for me to wrap my head around, that that's really the best planning approach. That if the city has a citywide issue, they should look at it citywide, and if roads like Valley or Park or something have to be abandoned or raised overall, they're going to have to be raised as a citywide endeavor, not as a condition of a building permit for a building at 45 Park Way or Park Lane.
Well, perhaps when you're making city council aware of item 3 on the proposed modifications, then perhaps you could also make them aware that perhaps some larger discussion of streets and sea level rise might be necessary at some point, because I think we're a little bit beyond speculative about some of these events. And you know, you say under these conditions these sites won't be developable. Well, then maybe these sites aren't developable, and maybe we should plan for that, or make a plan for how they would be.
Yeah.
Oh, am I too far away from my microphone?
Okay. Yeah. Did we address all of your concerns, Mr. Miro?
Yeah, I think that those of you who've spoken are all aware of the concerns, and I think the planning director is too. I mean, they're real concerns, and it's something that could affect the people who live there, and we want to make sure that, you know, we do the best we can by them. And so then the question becomes, you know, what's a reasonable strategy to make sure that whatever gets developed there is done in a very responsible and environmentally safe way, because we don't want to put people at risk.
Right.
And what's the best way of making sure that the best we can do to make that happen?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm hoping for. And if there's some kind of language that we could use to put it that way, and take these things into account as best we can, and certainly, you know, meeting all the legal requirements, of course, then I think we would have done something responsible and would have, you know, shown our concern for the future residents of this area. That's kind of what my hope is.
Okay. If I may, I think we had that discussion. It was like, you know, how far do we go? Because nobody's applied to do anything. And it might be 10 years before somebody applies to do anything, if ever. So once an application is put forward, is then we go, okay, where are we? You know, have we got flooding that's imminent, or hang on, things just turned around and it's all fabulous again. trying to live in hope here, so it was more like at the time an application may come in that we would really be drilling down into what lies beneath, what are we doing, is that correct? Am I remembering that right? Okay.
Yeah, I think you covered it very well.
Right.
That's what
It's like, you know, I mean, there may never be an application.
That's true.
We identified it, the building owners are okay with it, but this still may never happen. It's not imminent in any way, shape, or form.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But my understanding of the general plan is that that's what you have policies in the general plan for, to take into account things that may or may not happen. And if it does happen, then you want to have it clear what the position of the community is. That's all.
Yeah. I think general plan speaks for what the community wants at any point. Paul, you had some things on your mind?
Thank you, Commissioners. Back when they first proposed the Parkside plan, I just was reminding some specific inherent issues that are going on with that property, and two of them in particular are the Crystal Springs Pipeline 1 and 2, which are a 54-inch and a 60-inch water main that runs right behind all the warehouses back there on the properties. And if you're talking about raising areas above the grade that's there, you know, that's an old part of the system, and they've had failures on both those pipelines in Brisbane and Daly City. So I was concerned back when they were talking about it that you know, I know other parts of Brisbane, San Bruno Avenue through the park, and San Francisco Avenue has those pipelines with their inherent antiquated system issues. But this area in particular could have a real catastrophic situation. If you've ever seen how much excavation it takes to get down to the pipelines to work on them, when they do need to work on them, it's extensive. So I didn't know if any of that was in the plans, or if they had any future forecast as to how they could deal with, or if they've talked to SFPUC about the pipelines. Thank you.
Stuff?
The pipelines were identified, and actually they were a driving force of the design, because you know, there was a discussion about how far the building should be set back on these lots, and they actually had to be pushed more to the street to preserve the pipeline easements and stay out of the easements. Again, the idea of what a development would have to do to ensure that the integrity of the facilities and the easement is respected will be, again, the subject of a development proposal, not something we're going to plan for. If someone wants to develop one of those sites, they're going to have approval of SFPUC for a development proposal on that site. So that's kind of again the typical business operation of getting a building permit to do anything on a site that's encumbered by an easement like that.
Okay. Anyone else?
Colleen?
Going once, going twice.
Listening to all the discussion, I think it would be worthwhile considering adding a note to the general plan that with regard to Parkside, knowing that this is within a floodplain and subject to seismic liquefaction, that overall suitability of development should be considered.
Yeah.
And that kind of covers all the bases. Something to that extent.
Okay.
Can I just ask a clarifying? So that would be under the policy and programs by sub area.
Okay. Barbara, you still want to say something?
Definitely. Yeah, sorry I missed part of this because I was out talking to people and wanted to see kind of what their concerns were.
You should be here.
I should be here. I should be in two places at once. Right. Something kind of struck me, you know, when the Baylands were doing the Baylands planning process and they want to do 1 foot above sea level rise. And so when this project is going forward, you want them to look at sea level rise when they're building it. I think our general plan policy should be that every building should look at a 50-year horizon beyond groundbreaking, so that they're not immediately in the mud, basically. I mean, this when you're 1 foot above current sea level rise projections is meaningless when you're for 50 years out, you know. And I know that gets into really speculative land, and the developers are going to hate it. But if you want the building to be out of the water 50 years from now, and I would hope that we're building with that kind of longevity in mind, that you should just write in something where they have to start looking at that, and maybe you can compromise when you come to that. But if you don't start by setting that expectation, it's not going to be there. You know, you have to start with that. I think you have to start with that expectation. And the other thing was just, when are we ever going to get that map, that zoning map, amended? Because that's kind of been hanging out there forever and ever and ever. And I would really hope that this planning commission, now that they're sort of their Baylands thing is behind them a little bit, would tackle that, since we have to update the general plan and everything anyway with this other stuff. I think now would be an opportune time to go ahead and fix the zoning map so that it's consistent for the Baylands. Thank you.
Okay, so we should start building the structures now 5 feet high already, or 10
Well,
feet
I mean,
high.
yeah, raising the road is one thing, but how are you going to go back and jack up everybody's apartment buildings? I mean, I would totally think that if we're trying to protect people, we'd at least start with the buildings a little bit higher, and then if we deal with the road as we got to deal with the road, you know?
So we will have the buildings like they have in the islands, you know, on the stills. You know.
Sure, I mean, if that's what it takes.
I'd like to get back to this. I really would.
You know, maybe there's a little ramp up that, I don't know. I don't think that's something we have to solve today.
Yeah.
We just have to make sure that the building's not going to be halfway underwater, the first story.
Okay, Ms. Kenneth.
No, can we just get back to this?
Yeah, we'll get back to that. I think we've done, and staff, have you gotten all the information that whatever we discussed tonight? And I think you'll come back with a revised.
No, I'm not intending on coming back.
You know,
We can come back with a resolution that will reflect Mr. Miller's comments as modified by, or as suggested by Commissioner Mackin for the Parkside plan, recognizing environmental hazards, flood, sea level rise, liquefaction, etc., and that those factors are taken into consideration for development at the appropriate time when development proposals move forward.
So that amendment will be part of our consent calendar for the next meeting then?
No, I mean, unless you won't adopt if you will not adopt the resolution tonight with that amendment, then we'll bring it back. But that would be my suggestion, is you adopt.
we can adopt it if you.
With that
I mean, that's
amendment.
only that one comment.
It's only one comment. We have to incorporate that. So who wants to? So we're going to make a motion to adopt this resolution. Okay, who wants to make a motion?
I will make the motion that we adopt resolution number GPA-2-17, recommending adoption of the Parkside at Brisbane Village Precise Plan and approval of general plan text and map amendment GPA-2-17 to the City Council.
Okay.
Second.
Subject to the modifications discussed.
Subject to the modification.
Subject to modifications as
Okay,
suggested.
so we have a second from Commissioner Anderson. All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you for being patient for so long. And hopefully, we'll move along with the next item now. The items initiated by staff.
Just point of order, whether you want to extend the meeting, or we can probably wrap this
Oh,
up very
we can
shortly.
wrap it up in 5 minutes, unless there's somebody has a lot of.
I have nothing to.
We fit
I don't.
overextending it anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
we already
just go.
overextending. Okay,
S-
so item initiated by the staff.
Do I have anything? No. I'm not aware of any items. Do you have anything?
You know,
The only thing I can think of is that council, I believe, were confirmed for adoption of the cannabis ordinance at September 7th, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And then the M1 rezoning is going to be pushed off to, I think, October to the council. The one you reviewed, I believe, earlier this spring or summer.
Okay, items initiated by the commission, anything?
I would just like to again ask staff, please consider moving the parking issue up without the addition of an additional commissioner.
We can shoot for, since we do have an extra week in our cycle, it's our next meeting, September 12th. We'll see if we can at least tee it up with some background information for discussion on the 12th.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I'm looking for motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the meeting of Tuesday, August 22nd until the next regular meeting of September 12th, 2017, 7:30 p.m.
A second up.
Wants to, did you,
Second.
I did.
you second it? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 So moved. We'll